Welcome to Design Downtime, the podcast where we celebrate the joys of living a balanced creative life. I'm your host, Guy Siegel, a design director in Toronto, Canada, and I invite you to join me on this journey as we redefine what it means to be a successful design professional. Let's break free from the shackles of hustle culture and embrace the full spectrum of human experience, because life is too precious to be spent only in pursuit of productivity. Today, I'm delighted to be talking with Shannon Leahy. Shannon has worked at the intersection of words, strategy, design, and people for 15 years. In that time, she's been a web copywriter, an instructional designer, and a senior UX manager. These days, Shannon is a senior content design manager at Capital One, and she organizes a meetup called RVA Content Strategy, which is running 12 years strong now. Shannon lives in Richmond, Virginia with her family and their dog, Ginger Snap. Melbourne, Australia is her home away from home. She's a dual citizen. Her favorite neutral is leopard print, and her superpower is asking questions. Lots of questions. Shannon, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate getting to hang out and take a break from the grind.
It's an absolute pleasure. So you want to talk to us about your home away from home, Australia?
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's so funny because at first I was like, I'm so boring and I don't do anything fun. I think it's fun to just go to Target by myself for a couple hours. And then one of my go-to fun facts is I'm a dual citizen of the US and Australia by way of my mom. And so I've had the just absolute fun and pleasure of getting to go visit my family pretty regularly in Melbourne in Australia. So yeah, it's an important part of what makes me me.
So you grew up in the US?
Yes. Yeah. My parents, I feel like their origin story is straight out of a rom-com. They both happened to be traveling through Hawaii. My dad was in the Navy and my mom was traveling. I think she was en route to New York to visit some family friends and took a detour through there and they happened to meet. And then, as the saying goes, just fairy tale romance of sorts. But they met by chance. And then when they got married, they came to the States to live here. So I was born and raised in Virginia, but ever since, I think the lore goes, ever since I was a baby, we prioritized traveling back to and visiting our family. So I think I've probably been there at least 15 times in my life so far. I've been a lot, to say the least.
Okay. What age were you when you first went there?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember because I've seen the photo of my little baby passport and my big I looked like the Gerber baby. I just had these big round baby cheeks. So I was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 12 months old. So literally went as a little baby. And then as I grew up and, people would be talking to me in grade school, we'd go on vacation in the States here, usually from June, July, August and go back to school in September. So talking to friends at school, they'd be like, oh yeah, what are you doing this summer? And I'm like, I'm going to go to Australia for 6 to 8 weeks. Bye. So a lot of times what we would do is we'd go travel when I was on school holidays. And because it was such a big break, we were able to go for pretty much the whole summer. The only bummer was it was summer here, but it was winter there. And then as I've gotten older, when I was at uni, I started going over winter break between semesters because I'd have about 3 weeks off. So that was really nice because I didn't remember going in when it was summer there when I was little. So getting to re-experience that and getting to do summer stuff in the middle of the doldrums of a US winter has been nice. And then I think once I started working, I haven't gone as frequently as I used to go as a kid, but have tried really hard to save up my PTO and use it so that we can go. Yeah.
Tell me more about, because you went there as, to visit your family, not as a, I would say a pure tourist in that sense. How is that travel different from you from going to places where you don't have family?
Yeah, it's so funny. So I just this past summer, in June, I went to London, and I remember being so caught up in, we've got to make, like, I haven't been before. So the London trip, I was like, I've got like this bucket list of things that I really want to go try and do. And they definitely probably skewed a little bit more touristy, because I was just like, I really want to go see like Big Ben. I'm a big fan of Ted Lasso. So my husband and I trekked out to Richmond and like sat in the pub where they filmed the show. And like we sat and ate dinner and got drinks and like the whole thing. But like, it was a very planned out, very full on, very like, we got to make the most of this. We even did like double-decker bus tour, because we were like, we want to get around and see as much as we can, so that if we come back in the future, we can find, is there a neighborhood we want to go back to and like spend some time in? Is there a site that we saw in passing that we would love to just go like spend half a day there wandering around? And like, it's so funny, because as I was like thinking about what might we talk about today, I think one of the things that has struck me, like when we go, a lot of times, yeah, we work in, and I've done a lot of touristy stuff in Melbourne, but a lot of times too, we don't really over plan our trips, because a lot of it, the focus was, we're going to go have a big family dinner with this cousin and with these cousins and this aunt and these uncles. And there was a lot of emphasis on just enjoying and making space for just having downtime with our family, because we don't get to see them that frequently. And yeah, we had phone calls, and then as, like we've got FaceTime and WhatsApp, like we have more ways to stay connected now than we did when I was a little kid. But it's funny, because like for my husband, the couple times he's been with us so far, like he was like, I haven't been here before. So like that contrast of like, he was like, there are sites and there are things, and like I'm here to see family, and I'm also here like as a tourist, and like that kind of like tension almost of like, I'm like, we'll just play it by ear, and he's like, no, we gotta like get out and do stuff. So like it was really interesting, and like I had to kind of remind myself of like, oh yeah, this is what it's like to like come on your very first trip and want to try to like do all the things, whereas I'm more like, I just want to hang out with my family, and like if that means like we're gonna go spend a day at like High Point Mall, then that's what I'm content to be like, oh yeah, I haven't been to some of my favorite shops in a while. Like, I just want to go to the mall today. And for most people, they're probably gonna be like, why'd you go? Like, why'd you go shop there? And I'm like, because it's the mall that's like 10 minutes away from my grandparents' house. I'm gonna go to that one because it's nearby and it's convenient. So yeah, definitely. And I think this was always like a nice carryover from like kind of like what I probably internalized from like being around my family and being around like my mom and my aunt and my uncles and stuff was, I don't know, we took a lot of joy in the air quote like mundane, like one of our family traditions, and it happens when we're there, when we're not there, what was Monday night dinners at my grandparents' house. So it'd be my aunt, my two uncles, the family, cousins, me and my mom if we were there visiting. And it's just something we do. And like that is part of like my ritual when I go to visit. And I really look forward to Monday night dinner. And it's not like, it's just, we're just cooking regular everyday meals. It's not like we're going out of our way to like do this big fancy dinner. Like, it's not like we're trying to like do like, oh yeah, we got to do it up like US Thanksgiving or something. But yeah, it's just like, it's just really it's just nice. And I don't know, I just have so many good memories of like doing that stuff growing up. And like now as an adult, I'm extra aware of and really appreciative of like getting to do that stuff, because as different family members are getting older and they're dying, it's like I can't do that with all of them anymore. Or even when the pandemic happened, we had been trying to schedule, it would have been my daughter's like second trip and our son's first trip over. And we were trying to go in like January 2020. And then we said, oh, I don't think we're going So not being able to see our family for several years in a row, I just got to go back and visit, was it a conference last year? And I got to go back and visit them for the first time since before the pandemic. And it was just so huge. And like all I wanted to do, like I told my family, they're like, oh, what do you want to go do? Is there anything you want to see? And I was like, I just need to go to Yamcha and I just want to hang out with everybody. Like, I just want to chill and see all of you because we haven't been together in so long.
So growing up and visiting Australia on your summer breaks or on holidays, what were the differences for you as an American going there and seeing or are there any differences?
Oh, I feel like it was little enough that like I don't think I appreciated the differences, but like there would be funny things that would happen. Like I remember one time I was at my cousin's house and one of their friends rang up and my cousin was like, oh yeah, our cousin Shannon from America's visiting. And then I got to talk to their friend because they were like, I want to hear an American accent. And what's it really like at like high school and this, that, and the other? So like there were little things like that. But I think because I spent so much time with my family, I don't know. Like I think as I've gotten older, I've really, really appreciated the quality of food and it's less processed stuff. And my family has had a really good like work-life balance and like they're super driven and like they go and like have achieved all these wonderful amazing things, but also like I saw them very consistently like going on vacation and they would make time for us even if it was like they would stop by my grandparents' house on their way home from work and we would all like have afternoon tea together, like have a snack or like I feel like I think I'm more aware now as an adult, kind of like reflecting on that kind of those kinds of things around like bigger things around like, oh yeah, like work-life balance or like being aware of like universal health care and I got sick one time and we had to go to the chemist to get me some meds and it was just so easy. We went to the chemist, they said, oh yeah, this is what's going on, here you go, here's what you need, in and out. And like we went to the chemist like down the street from my aunt's house, like super easy. So like now that stuff in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, that's a little different from how things work over here. But I think, and I don't know if it's like, because as a kid too, I was just like, oh yeah, no, like I know that I am a dual citizen and like, yeah, this is just normal to me. Like it was just very like, cool, I'm going to go back and forth between these two places and these multiple cultures. Because my family also, my grandparents immigrated to Australia from China. So like to me, it was just always this really cool way to kind of like reconnect with my family and our background. So I don't know. Yeah. I think as a kid, yeah, it was definitely like, no, this is just normal. And like, because I started going so young, it was just like, this is what we're doing. And it's like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing.
So what does being a dual citizen of the US and Australia mean to you personally?
Gosh, I think for me, I've really, really appreciated that I did get to experience life and culture outside of just being in the US, like being in Virginia and being right smack next to Richmond. Richmond, Virginia has a history. And it's deeply tied to the enslavement of Black people and a lot of bigotry and things like that. So like being able to go to another country and get outside of my own little bubble and also knowing more about my family's history. Like I still don't know all of it, but my mom and her siblings, you know, both parents worked. So like they had to like look after themselves and basically kind of like grow up by themselves and like just being able to know and understand that history and also knowing that like my grandparents started from pretty much nothing and like they built up a life for themselves. They built up a life for their family. They started and ran their own restaurant. So for anyone who's ever been to Tom Wong Cafe, it's not open anymore, but if you ever went there, that was my grandparents. That was my grandmom and my granddad who set that up and ran that. So I think like being able to appreciate and understand, again, like the nuance of it, like really lost on me as a kid, but like as I've gotten older and like kind of knowing that like being part of all these different worlds and communities and cultures, it just makes me so appreciative of what my family has done and like the ways they looked out for each other and like kind of the things that like my parents were able to do, and then what in turn how they were able to like support me and kind of be there for me. I feel like there's that. And then also like it's cool bragging rights. It's always a good icebreaker when I meet new people. I'm always like, oh yeah, so fun, dual citizen, yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I also like, as silly as it is, I'm like, there's a bunch of fun food and like other stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, like I have my favorite treats and stuff from there. So like, again, it's like these really like deep things around really understanding and appreciating my family's history. And then also like, there's also like the superficial fun stuff of like, I also like get access to like really fun candy, and like my aunt's visiting us right now and just brought me slippers, and we went to our favorite guy at Queen Victoria Market we always buy slippers from him. Like, yeah, it's the deep stuff and like just fun stuff too, I think.
So actually nothing trivial about food. What are some of those treats that you really love in Australia that you really can't find where you are?
Let's see. They're so specific and so just like every day. But there's a really good corn relish. It's really good on sandwiches, and I've like tried some stuff at my local groceries around here. So I don't know if people have more tips for me in Richmond. I don't know. Point me in the right direction of a really good corn relish. There's that. I also really like drinking Milo. So my aunt also just brought me a stash of Milo. Tim Tams, of course. We do Tim Tams, and I really like Caramello Bears. But like one of the big things I really miss when I'm here, because in the Richmond area, there's not a lot of places for yum cha or dim sum. So whenever we go there, like I'm always like, please take me multiple times. Please take me to yum cha. I don't get to eat this ever at home. And then I'm like, I got to get like my next fix that will tide me over until the next time we come back to visit. But yeah, I'm like struggling for other specifics because like this is also like how oblivious I was as a kid. But a lot of places where I've gone where I'm like, oh my gosh, I had such a great meal. Like they're like local places where I'm like, oh yeah, it's like down on Union Road and it's like across the street from the grocer. But like, I don't remember like what the names of the restaurants are. Because I'm like going off of muscle memory on like, oh yeah, no, we just walk down the street and we go 2 doors and yeah, there's the place. And yeah, I always get this meal there. Yeah, I'm bad with details sometimes, in real life at least.
So you traveled, of course, many times to Melbourne. Have you traveled in Australia outside of Melbourne?
I am just now starting to rectify that error. I had the chance to, one of my family members was working in Perth for a little bit, and my mom and my aunt went, and I don't remember. I must have come back sooner or something, but like, I really wish I would have figured out how to make that work. I was super bummed I didn't do that. But this last time when I went last year, I went to Sydney. I went to Sydney first, and then I went to Melbourne. So a bucket list item of mine is I would like to make my way around more places in Australia for sure.
You mentioned you have taken your kids to Australia. What's it like seeing their reactions?
Oh gosh, I think it was really cool. We did a photo where it was me, my mom, my grandmother, and my daughter. So we were like, we got like 4 generations lined up. Like I was like, this is so surreal. Oh my gosh, like how are we doing this? How do I have a little kid here? What? So like there were moments like that. I think there were also moments of, again, like trying to like remember like being a little kid and being like, what would you like to do? You don't want to just sit around in the house and talk with adults all day, which I'm very happy and content to do because I'm catching up with all my relatives. So like, I think it was a really good way to kind of like get back in touch with and remember what were some of the really, really fun things that I got to do as a kid and that I really liked doing. And again, some of it was a mix of just regular everyday stuff. Like, yeah, there's zoos. There's a zoo down the street from my house here in the US. Like, we go to the zoo, but like getting to go to the zoo there and see different animals or just do it in a different place, and even just like not underestimating like the wow factor of like public transit. And because around here we primarily get around in our family cars. Like we have to drive everywhere. It's not super walkable, and there's not a lot of public transit options where we are, but like getting to go on the tram and getting to ride on the train and getting around that way was almost like as fun as, oh yeah, we like went to the big aquarium, we went to the zoo, like we did this stuff. So I feel like it was, a good way to tap back into and just kind of like, appreciate and just kind of be in the moment of, oh yeah, like this is all really new. It was also a little hard because I haven't traveling when I would travel with my mom. It was just me and my mom. And from what I understand, I was a really easygoing kid, but like I hadn't traveled with a kid before. So for me, I was like, oh yeah, like sometimes the flight's delayed. It makes our connection a little bit tight. We're going to have to hurry through the airport. And so for my daughter, she was like, we're in such a rush. What is going and I don't know, it was a good reminder of like, hey, you have all this context up in your big old grown-up noggin. She doesn't have all of that. So like being able to also like kind of slow down and just being like, oh yeah, here's what we're going to do. I don't know. I don't want to make it super worky, but it's also kind of like, it's good parallels for when we're like having to deal with work stuff and trying to explain complicated stuff or like navigate through something. But yeah, it was equal parts fun and awe-inspiring, and also it's really tiring traveling halfway across the world with, at the time, her first trip, she was 3. She was 3 and hadn't been away from home in that kind of an extended time period. And she was like, these are all people I've like kind of seen in like FaceTime, and now we're all face to face. So I think it was also like, it was an interesting contrast of like, I was so used to going because we went really frequently and I saw everybody so often enough when I was little enough that I was, so much of it is so second nature to me that it like, kind of remembering like, oh yeah, everyone else, this is like their first time doing this thing. Like, oh yeah, gotta like make space for that.
You were there in a very, a young age where it set some sort of impression of what Australia is for you. And then you come back and because you don't live there, you kind of have the ability to notice changes throughout the years. And you're looking back now, since you were, differences between what Australia is now and how it looks and how it feels to you. How has it changed?
Everything's so expensive. And and like I say that because like, not that I was paying attention to housing prices as a kid, but just like, I feel like when I was younger, I think like it felt like there was a little bit more open space, and like it's a similar feeling that I'm like also like feeling at home too. But sometimes I'm like, what was really going on, and how much of it was like, I was just like in this little kid world of like, everything like, like the bliss of being an ignorant little kid, So like it's been hard to with like realizing that like some of the restaurants that I really used to like to go to, like they don't exist anymore, or like being like, oh, I thought that like that used to work like that, or like, yeah, I still go to High Point, but I remember when High Point was a small mall and like getting in and out of the parking lot was not bad, and now it's just so big. And just everything, everywhere you turn, one of the yum cha restaurants that my family really used to like to go to, I don't remember when they closed down. I don't remember if it was like during the pandemic or like right after things started to kind of like turn. But like they were a little locally owned business, and they're not there anymore. And part of it, as an adult, I understand now, is like they they couldn't afford to rent that space anymore. And like, that really bums me out. This mall's super huge. Like, it's almost over too big. It's super intimidating to like, whereas before it's like, oh yeah, I'll stroll through the mall for a couple hours. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I'll make it through like a small chunk of this mall in a couple hours now. And like, everything's a big parking garage. So like, it's been, I don't know, it's been on the one hand, like we've found other restaurants and like there's other places that we've gone to and explored as a family, but also it's been a little sad, kind of confronting like, oh yeah, some of this stuff, it's just not there anymore. I don't know, like when we just went, like my trip, like it was kind of bittersweet because like it was I was really paying attention to. I was like, oh yeah, like my grandparents are older now and they're not able to do as much anymore. So like as excited as I was to see them, I was also just like, oh yeah, this trip, like there's just something about this trip that just feels really, really different. And I think part of it's like, well, gosh, yeah, the last time you came, there wasn't a pandemic and there wasn't all this other like stuff happening like politically in the world, or at least it was happening, but it was different. So I don't know. Yeah, it's been really, really interesting to kind of like watch and feel and like see how things change. And like even with watching my cousins grow up, and some of them are they're out, like they've got their first jobs, they've got their apartments, they've got partners, and I'm just like, I remember we were like running around outside at the park, like kicking a ball together. Like, where did this happen? Why are you so grown up now? Stop being grown.
You mentioned some differences between Australia and the US. Do you find yourself thinking, oh, I wish this thing was more like Australia? Or on the other hand, I wish Australia had this from the US?
Oh, I wish things were a little bit more walkable. Like oh my gosh, I would, and I know like, cause like when I go to DC, like I can go right around the metro and like there's pockets of that, but one of my favorite parts was always just like, yeah, we could like set up home base at my grandparents' house. And then there was so much stuff we could go and do and explore. And it was as easy as like, let me go get on a train or a tram. And like, I gotta like get gas in my car and pack for a long trip and like things like that. I do wish we had more stuff around some of the regulation around like processed food and things like that. And I would also really like universal healthcare everywhere one day. It's funny though, because like the flip side is I do sometimes like miss some of the convenience of, I feel like every time I go, I always forget, like late night shopping only happens on certain days of the week. And like here, I can run up to Walmart. It's 5 minutes away from my house. I can go in at like 11 o'clock in my PJs because we need Motrin for the kids because someone's running a fever or the battery died in a nightlight or something. Like, I don't know, like that's kind of like a blessing and a curse, but I do like I think it was like little conveniences and like some of that stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really used to that now. Or sometimes, I don't know, it's so silly. I think one time I wanted some like really just terrible store-bought like queso or something. I was like, I want some cheese dip and chips. And like, I was like, oh, I don't think Velveeta and like salsa, like I was like, oh, I don't think I can do that. But like I think the other thing too is we've got some family nearby, which is really, really great because like my husband and I, like we made a choice with like where we wanted to establish roots of like we're minutes away from his parents and family, and then my parents are only like an hour and a half away. But man, teleportation would be so nice because I think on the one hand I'm like, oh yeah, no, like that like if you like watched a Hallmark movie and you saw like the big family gathering, it's like, oh yeah, I get to do that. I just don't get to do it all the time. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I could do it more. But I'll pause there.
Do you have any tips for people who are going to Australia for the first time?
Ooh, I'm very biased and think everybody should stop by. Everybody should stop by Melbourne. Even just like little things like give yourself plenty of time for your layovers. And like, especially like once you've got to clear customs, either in the US or in Australia, like give yourself the long one. But I think really taking advantage of and like definitely do, if you can, depending on what time of year you're going, like some of like the fun tourist stuff, like repeat things that I did as a kid and then did as an adult with my family. We went to Phillips Island to see the penguins come in and go to their nests. Always super cool and fun. I don't know if it's still open, but like on our way home from doing that, we stopped off. There was a like chocolate factory, like where you got to like watch chocolate being made. They had some really cool sculptures of different Australian celebrities and like pop culture personalities. And like, I just remember like we did it on a whim and it was so much fun. So like extending that thought, like if you're going into Melbourne and going into the city, like there's all these really cool arcades. So like going down side streets and like just exploring, like there's a lot of really cool stuff on the main streets, but like as you get in and explore different side streets and stuff, like there's cool street art and cafes and just so many little things that it's like, oh, this is so fun. I'm also super biased because I'm a very casual tennis fan, but like going to the Australian Open was really cool to see because we've got the US Open and like, yeah, people get excited about it, but like tennis, I don't know, it was such a big deal in Melbourne. So like the vibe and the energy and the excitement of like just this big tennis tournament that we're hosting and like people love to like go and roll up into that. So I definitely like, I've gone a few times and like, it's always really fun. And I think, again, very biased because this is something I like to do with my family, like go get a really good yum cha, go do that, go do that. But I think, yeah, like just depending on what you like to do, like I've got family members who are like really into like going to like breweries and wineries and stuff like that. So like there's a lot of fun and variety. Like if you're like, I want to do more food stuff or I want to do more outdoor stuff or I want to do like, there's some really cool, unique stuff to really take advantage of. Also highly recommend if you have the chance to go on Great Ocean Road and go see some of the landmarks around there. I remember we stopped off at and like got to walk through a big forest area, which was really fantastic. And then we actually went to go see the 12 Apostles, which are these really big, awesome rock formations along the beach and like in the ocean and just really stunning. I think my other go-to, Queen Victoria Market, and just going and spending the day there and walking through the different stalls. It's just this big open air market. So you can get like fresh groceries and stuff, but also if you just like want to wander through and like local craftspeople will have stuff, like it's just a fun mix. And like it's another like core memory from my childhood of like going there with my family on the weekends and like going and walking around and like doing the grocery shopping and also like getting our slippers and stuff.
That's awesome. Shannon, where can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I also have a profile set up on ADP List and take mentoring sessions sometimes. And I also mentioned in my intro, I run a meetup called RVA Content Strategy. So if you go to rvacontentstrategy.com, we've got upcoming events listed, and we also have our email list if you want to stay in touch for future events. We're based in Richmond. It's RVA Content Strategy, but I run all my events. They're all free and they're all virtual, and I try really hard to try to do the time zone math so different folks in different places can join. So if you ever want to stop by, we would love to have you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you again so much for having me. I can't say enough how appreciative I am of getting to talk and hang out.
This is all for this episode of Design Downtime. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your downtime.